Hello and welcome to this another project tutorial. So today's tutorial is about PostgreSQL and we'll learn how to write queries, how to manage data with PostgreSQL. So let's get started. This project is about international debts. So not only individuals take debts to manage their necessities, countries may also need to take debts to manage their economy. So, for example, infrastructure spending is one costly ingredient required for a country's citizens to live comfortable lives. The World Bank is an organization that provides debts to countries, and in this notebook, we're going to analyze international debt data collected by the World Bank. The dataset contains information about the amount of debt owed by developing countries across several categories. So in this project, we're going to answer questions like what is the total amount of debt that is owed by the countries listed in the dataset? Which country owns the maximum amount of debt and what does the amount look like? And what is the average amount of debt owed by the countries across different debt indicators? And many more such questions. So without any further ado, let's get started. First of all, we are using this cell magic %% SQL. So this will help us. This will just give the instruction to Google Colab or Jupyter Notebook that this particular cell is reserved for SQL. So uh, PostgreSQL. Okay, international debt. And the first query that we're going to write is for just viewing the data from the database international debt. Our database, the name of our database is basically international debt, and we are going to view our data set, and the phrase limit 10 means that we just want to see the top 10 rows. So select start from database name limit 10. This is just going to output the first 10 rows of our database. So as we can see, our database has country name, country code, indicator name, indicator code, and debt, the amount of debt. Now we're going to find the number of distinct countries. So what we are interested in is that how many distinct countries are there actually. So as you see, many countries get repeated, and in fact in this particular cell there is one country only which is repeated 10 times. This repetition is basically because one country is most likely to have debts in more than one debt indicator. So what we are interested in here is the number of unique countries. So again, use cell magic %SQL and select count distinct country names. So we are basically trying to count the unique country names, and distinct is the keyword that will help us identify the unique country names. Country name is the name of our column, and count is the method which will help us count the unique country names. And we are using the alias total distinct countries for storing this complete result from international debt. So we'll always have to write the name of the database which we are referring to in this particular query. So what this outputs is that total distinct countries 124. So now we know that we are dealing with a database of 124 unique countries. Now so in this database, we have this column called indicator name, which briefly specifies the purpose of taking the debt. And with that, we also have a column called indicator code, which symbolizes the category of these debts. Now, knowing about the various debt indicators will help us to understand the areas in which a country can possibly be indebted to. Now, we are just sorting the different debt indicators to find out how many unique debt indicators we have. And as the output tells us, there are 25 unique debt indicators. So the code that we're using for this is select distinct distinct indicator code as distinct debt indicators. So distinct is the keyword which will help us identify the number of unique indicator codes, and distinct debt indicators is the alias that we're using for this. this complete result, and we'll have to specify the name of the database we're referring to. So we'll have to write this line which is from international debt, and we are ordering it by distinct debt indicators, which means the most frequently occurring ones are on the top. So yep, this is how it looks like. Now, totaling the amount of debt owed by the countries. What we are interested in here is the total debt which is owed by all the countries, the sum of the total debt. So all that we need to do is we just need to calculate the sum of the debt column. Again, magic function, and select round. So let me tell you briefly what this means. So what we're interested in here is the sum of the debt owed by all the countries. So basically the sum of the entries in the debt column divided by 1 million. So we just want to know how many millions of US dollars are owed in debts. So divided by 1 million, and then we need to round off the resultant figure for two decimal places, and then we'll store it complete result as total debt. So step by step, let's see what we are doing here. So sum debt, what this means is, sum debt basically means the sum of the entries in the debt column, and divide by 1 million means, as you know that when we'll divide this figure by 1 million, so we'll just get to know how many millions of US dollars rent are we referring to. And then we'll use this round function, which will round this entire number up to 2 decimal places. So comma 2 stands for round this figure to 2 decimal places, and we'll store this entire result as total debt from international debt. That is the name of our database. So total debt is this much. So 1 2 3 4 5 6. So this is 1 2 3 4 5 6 3 million 3 million US dollars, which is too much, and something that doesn't actually yield any important information for us. So we are like, what will we do of this figure, that 3 million US dollars are the total debt owed by all the countries? Still, we learned this amazing thing that we can do. We can apply two functions in one row. Okay, next we are going to find out the country with the highest debt. So for this, what we need to do is, what does your first instinct tell you? How are we going to calculate the country with the highest debt? Simply, we are going to sort the countries based on the debts, and then we are going to print the topmost. We are going to sort it in descending order, and then we are going to print the topmost row. So for this, the code we are going to use is here. Select country name and sum of debt as total debt. So what we are interested in is not debt, but rather the sum of the debt for a particular country. So sum debt as total debt, and from international debt, which is the default line. Now we'll group this by country name, because what we want is the country name to be displayed, and order this by total debt descending. DESC stands for descending. So we are sorting this entire list by the column total debt in descending order. So this will give us a descending order list for the top countries that owe the highest amount of debt, and we'll use limit 1. Limit 1 stands for show me just the first row. So China is there on the first row, and China owes the most total debt. Next, average amount of debt across indicators. So what we want here is, for different debt indicators, what is the average amount of debt? And we're just going to print the top 10 debt indicators and their respective average debts. So select indicator code as debt indicator. Indicator code, as I already told you, is a brief. So indicator name is a brief description of what the debt is about, and there is an indicator code which uniquely identifies this. So indicator code as det indicator. This is just something we are doing for our convenience. You might choose to skip this. Indicator name, which is indicator name because we want indicator name to appear in our final table. And average det as average det. So average of the det column, we want this to be stored as average det. Now from international det, don't forget this line. And then group by det indicator and indicator name, we want both of these lines to appear and we want the data to be grouped by them. Order by average det descending. So again we are ordering our data by average det descending. So this will give us descending order of a list which contains the maximum det and the minimum det in descending order basically. And limit 10 stands for we're just going to see the top 10 average det entries. Okay, next we are interested in highest amount of principal payments. Okay, I'm going to read this. We can see that the indicator, this particular indicator, tops the chart of average det. So this particular indicator tops the chart of average det. Now this category includes repayment of long-term debts. The countries that take on long-term debt to acquire immediate capital. More information can be found here and I'll drop the link in the description. Now, an interesting observation in the above finding is that there is a huge difference in the amount of indicators after the second one. So this is 590, 516 and then there's a sudden drop to 215, right? This indicates that the first two indicators might be the most severe categories in which the countries owe their debts. We can investigate this a bit more so to find out which country owes the highest amount of debt in the category of long-term debts. This particular is the long-term debt category. Since not all countries suffer from the same kind of economic disturbances, this finding will allow us to understand that particular country's economic condition a bit more specifically. So we are going to find out the country with largest the highest amount of debt in the category of long-term debts. So select country name, indicator name. So indicator name, we want to specify the code of the indicator, but we want the indicator name to be there in the final table we have as a result of this. So where det equals to, now we are going to specify the condition. What are our conditions basically? Our conditions are that the det should be maximum and the indicator code should be this particular code dt.amt.dlxf.cd. So where det equals to, we are using where command, where keyword here. So pay attention. Where det equals to brackets, select max det from international det, which is our database name, where indicator code is this particular code. So this will give us the entries from this particular indicator code with the maximum det, and the data that we want to display for this particular entry is the country's name and the indicator name. So the country name is China and the indicator name is this particular name, which is long-term debt. So China has the highest amount of debt in the long-term debt. This is verified by the World Bank. And it is often a good idea to verify our analysis like this, since it validates that our investigations are correct. We saw that long-term debt is the topmost category when it comes to the average amount of debt, but it is the most common indicator in which the countries owe their debt. Let's find out. So you must have understood what we are going to find out here. The most common debt indicator. So we're just going to sort the indicator codes based on their frequency. Now select indicator code and count star as indicator count. So we're going to count the indicator count. We're going to count the number of occurrences for that particular indicator code and going to store it as indicator count from this particular database. From group by indicator code, we're going to group it by indicator code and order by the number of occurrence of that particular indicator code, which we have already stored it as indicator count. So this will be in descending order, and indicator code will also be in descending order, just like geographically. And we're going to display the first 20 rows of this column. Now, other viable debt issues and conclusion. So we have reached the end of our repository, and we are going to see the uh, any other viable debt issues that we might have. Although you can anyway you can use SQL for finding out any more information about this data, for uh, any other questions that you might want to ask this database. Like we asked which country owes the highest debt, and the answer was China. So we can ask like which country owes the minimum debt. So all these queries are very simple to write in SQL, and you can definitely give it a shot when you have time. Okay, so let's go through this last section. There are a total of 6 debt indicators in which all the countries listed in our dataset have taken debt. The indicator DT, AMT, DLXF, CD is also there in the list. So this gives us a clue that all these countries are suffering from a common economic issue, but that is not the end of the story, rather a part of the story. Let's change tracks from debt indicator now and focus on the amount of debt again. So let's find out the maximum amount of debt across the indicators with the respective country names. With this, we'll be in a position to identify the other plausible economic issues a country might be going through. By the end of this section, we'll have found out the debt indicators in which a country owes its highest debt. In this notebook, where we took a look at debt owed by countries across the globe, we extracted a few summary statistics from the data and unraveled some interesting facts and figures. We also validated our findings to make sure that the investigations are correct. Now, as we read here, we are going to find out we're no longer interested in indicator code and indicators. We are more interested in the amount of debt. So select country name, indicator code, maximum debt as max debt as maximum debt. So this is just the amount of maximum debt in the debt column, and we're going to store this as maximum debt from this international debt database. And we're going to group by country name and indicator code and order by maximum debt in descending order. So this will give us the maximum debts in descending order when grouped by country name and indicator name. And limit 10 stands for we just want to look at the first 10 entries. So as you can see, China, Brazil, China, Russian Federation, Turkey, South Asia, Brazil, Russian Federation, Brazil, least developed countries, new one classification. So this is a classification given on the basis of indicator code and the maximum debts basically. Okay, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you'll try this on your own. Thank you. Bye-bye.